I am your co-host, Ron Friedman, handle Ranchero, and Chris Cady. And today we have special guest, David Capablanca. David, did I say your last name correctly?
Yeah, you got it. That's perfect.
Awesome.
Capablanca.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the intro that I've been given for you is that I'm trying to understand, are you still in Puerto Rico or did you used to be in the trade space office?
No, I'm still in Puerto Rico. I signed the 1 year contract last year
Okay.
or
Yep.
around this time, I guess. It's been around a year now. And I'm taking a I went to Los Angeles. I'm over here in Los Angeles now
Oh, you're in
for a
LA right now. Okay.
podcast conference by LA Live.
Okay.
And I have this little office in the US Bank Tower. I don't know if you guys know LA. And I just decided to keep it for the longest because I got like such a good deal on it. Like when the COVID pandemic happened and the building was basically like abandoned. So
Chris knows
I
that
just
movie.
yeah. And yeah, so like I still keep it. And now since I have my own podcast, I decided to make it a studio as well. And I have some plans for in the future with LA is a great place for podcasting and all types of that industry. So I'm gonna see where it goes, So I decided to keep it. But no, I live in Puerto Rico.
So this this what also I have for your background is that you were an architect and you've been trading on and off since 2016 and full time since 2019. And to give you a plug, your podcast is called the Friendly Bear Podcast, right? Which we can see
Yeah.
on YouTube. And where else can we catch it?
Yeah, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible,
Got it.
iHeartRadio, like whatever you want, whatever you prefer, it's is there.
Got it.
Is there.
Got it. And Chris, doesn't he looks like he fits in LA, right? Like he's got his hair, he's got nice looking skin. Look at him. He's like he's when I think of LA, I'm like, all right, this guy's gonna run around LA and fit right in with all these other LA people that look good in the sunshine, right? Whereas like I'm up here in San Francisco, I gotta hide and throw a hat on and right. It's got that grayer weather. So
David,
I'm
well, yeah,
just
yes, so it's real
I'm
sunny.
envious.
Yeah, it's I was outside, like I had to like cool off a little bit because it was so hot. It's like 80 degrees right now. It's like pure sun everywhere. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's
Actually, I
actually
love it.
hot
It's
up here.
great. And
That's
then
nice.
also
So
in Puerto Rico is sunny too. So like I'm blessed.
get the best of both spots. I like it. So what do you trade? What's your trading
Small
background?
caps. So
Okay.
so yeah, so small caps. And you mentioned 2016. I started. I was fresh out of grad school with architecture, and I worked in the industry for a year in architecture, and like I was in the bottom of the totem pole, and I had to work my way back up again after 10 years of school. I was stuck in all these student loans. So I was like, I got to figure something out. And trading came along. I looked into real estate as well. Real estate, like be a realtor. So I had to do something about my financial situation, and
Mhm.
architecture wasn't going to cut it. Um, and yeah, on and off for a couple years, trying to figure out my life as an adult and paying bills and all that, and then coming to the markets with everything flat, refreshed, and approaching the market like with a clear mind. And then 2019, 2019, I was full time, and then barely profitable. 2020 happened, and I was ready for it, and I was able to take advantage of the opportunities that presented themselves. But yeah, I trade small caps. I've always gravitated towards short selling. Even from the very beginning, I saw like certain people talking about pump and dumps, and like me with the architecture background, and like I needed some, like I don't know, I gravitated towards something that made sense to me, and which was like, okay, these scammy stuff happening, these pumps, we kind of know the end game. It's going to come back down, and it's going to go back to where it was, or lower, just self implode. So that I was attracted to that, and I started swinging the short selling pump and dumps and the OTCs, and just longer term plays. And while I learned and honed my skills intraday, and yeah, now I do all types of short selling, and I like to expand in the future to longing as well. But like right now, short selling for me has worked out great, and I do all types. I do the intraday. I've been part of some short reports. And my channel now, the Friendly Bear, I'll even do like an intraday video on like a blatant pump and dump or something. And it's, so I really, you know, uh, expanded my game as far as short selling. Even now, the podcast, I'm interviewing other short sellers and activist short sellers. And but like in general, I just want to be the best trader I can be. You know what I mean? So like I'll expand to longs. In trade space, I've gone into I've dabbled a little bit of crypto, learning about options. I just want to be a well-rounded trader and just like I want to be in the matrix, of trading and like just reach my full potential.
I don't give a shit. I just want to make money, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah. What's great about trading is like the money is the points, the scoreboard. So yeah, as much money as I can. Like, when I first started, when I was first starting to get real profitable, like what was I grew up playing baseball, and I remember John Henry owned the Florida Marlins at one point, and I'm from Miami, and I used to go to the games on my little bicycle. I'll sneak in the games, and like it was crazy. But like John Henry, he was a futures trader. He owns the Red Sox now, and he would come to the players' parking lot, and I would go get the players' autographs after the games. And he would actually come out all the time. And he only owned the Marlins for like 1 year. Then he sold out and went to the Red Sox. He got a better deal, and he was able to like to get a refund on the Marlins and buy the Red Sox. But yeah, so I always saw like, okay, the markets. If John Henry's a billionaire, multi-billionaire, and he was a futures trader, like the markets is a way to get a lot of money. So yeah, I want to make as much money as I can, and yeah, of course, if I can own the Marlins or something, or yeah, that's the way to go. And then you got the guy that owns the Mets. What is it, Steve Cohen or something?
Yeah.
He's also a trader. It's like there's it's just infinite amount of levels. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my goal, is just keep going as high as you can go. So
Chris loves to say that. That's one of his favorite things is every day you come in, you have an opportunity to win the lottery, right? Like that's where else can you do that? Oh, and he scored a beer
exactly.
Yeah.
on top of winning the lottery.
Yes, my friend Aaron, who is working about 20 feet away, is developing a thing called Project Stanley software, which is a sort of a database of all the hockey players, and he's using it for salary negotiations between agents and owners. Just brought me a beer, so thank you very much to Aaron at Project Stanley. David, being an architect, you obviously have an artistic side to you, the drawing side, and then the spatial awareness and things like that. How do you exercise the artistic side? Obviously, you were drawn to that to go to architectural school. And have you
Yes.
ever designed anything that is now still standing?
Yes, I have. And I think about architecture all the time. It's a big part of the way I trade and what gravity, like everything about me. So yeah, I was part of a building. My favorite one is in Chengdu, China, actually.
Uh-huh.
It's under the main architect was Richard Meyer, and it's called the Light Pavilion. And and Levius Woods so Richard Meyer collaborated with Levius Woods, and Levius Wood died a couple years ago. But like he's a legend in a futurist legend with drawing and all that. But on architecture, I approached trading like I did architecture, and I did architecture um as hardcore as I do trading. So architecture, it just like consumes you,
Mm-hmm.
and like you have to like buy into it, and so
Are you
I
do you come down on the conceptual side or more the technical side?
yes, very very artistic. So like I in architecture school, I had one professor, so like my favorite one. He would say architects are like a conductor of a symphony. You have like, the violins here, the trumpets here, the vocals, the everything. It all comes together, and the conductor is the one. The architect is the conductor. So like I now the past couple of years now, since I learned the fundamentals of trading, um, like everything, from the basics and all that. Now, like, I approach like that. Like I know fundamentals, I know technicals, I know the news, I'm aware of all the short reports. I know what the Momos are thinking, what the Twitter memes promoters are doing, and it just all comes together now, and I'm able to like, like I just see myself as a conductor, and then I'm managing multiple accounts all at once, checking the locate shares here, checking the free ones here, seeing this. I have the process I go through, and it just all comes together. And that's why I need these big giant screens, because I need I need it all up. It's almost like uh like I'm really am in the matrix, you know. And like with architecture, architecture is very much like that, you know. So you got to know structures, you got to know
Right.
math, you got to know science, you got to know, you got to be. I was more of an artistic kind of a architect. Like I like design, I like drawing, I like conceptual. I like to know the culture of the people. I like to know where the space and the light and like what the building is going to be like in 50 years, you know,
You
what
do,
the
you do,
form.
right? You do know though that a great deal of architecture has got the core and the technicals and all those things. And I see the parallels that you talk about in regards to trading. How could you ever convince an architect to become a trader?
It's going to be tough, man, because architects are very much like dreamers for the most part, because you got to, in order to create something, you have to be extremely optimistic. And like trading is tough. Like I've tried to talk to my former colleagues and classmates and stuff about architecture, and I'm still a young architect, so the young architects are still caught up in that dream. And my colleagues of people like my around my age in their 30s are like that. So when I mention trading or I mention money, they kind of roll their eyes. They just don't understand it. And
How
but
do
like, you
they,
know,
how do they deal with risk? An architect doesn't really deal with risk, does it? Doesn't, do they?
I don't know. They don't deal with any risk. The risk is being stuck in your career and a standstill for until you're 65, you
Right?
know, or just yeah, you know. So actually, you know, in grad school, I went to UCLA. I studied under Frank Gehry. I don't know if you
Oh,
guys know who
yes.
Frank Gehry
I know
is,
who that is.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
but yeah, I like so he was at UCLA, and he actually has a building down the street, the Walt Disney Concert Hall. And Frank Gehry is the reason why I mention is because he didn't really start his career until 50 years old. He
Wow.
was working as a regular little as an architect, not making much money, and then he decided to just strike out on his own doing art and attracting all the artists, and then was able to get commissions with, and then like eventually he had enough capital. I know it's a dirty word, like in architecture, you can't, no one really talks about it, but like studying under him and watching his whole career trajectory, I kind of put the pieces together of how he was able to become himself. And he had enough money, he had enough capital. He sold he went into real estate, sold a couple of his houses, made a profit, and just started on his own firm. And from his own firm, he was able to decide his own projects, and he would only do artistic stuff. He would crumble paper. He would he just do sculpture kind of as architecture, and he was involved in the art community, and was able to just, you know, do what he wanted, you know.
Uh,
So and then by the time you know he was 50, and you know that was later in his 40s, and by the time he was 50, he was able to get a big commission, turned down a bunch because he was on his own. He made his own decisions. So yeah, I do have that. I use that as my one of my main examples is that I want to go back into architecture under my terms. So that's why I got all this energy for trading and stocks and like uh, taking this as far as I can go, because I do want to be able to design stuff in the future. I want to buy my own land or whatever and design and develop my own stuff, you know. So you know, to have that freedom to do it, you know, and instead of being stuck on the working your way up from the bottom of the totem pole, working for someone else, designing parking lots and bathrooms and staircases for 10, 15 years. And then you kind of get stuck into that lifestyle and you know, but yeah, Frank Gehry was a main inspiration for me just to go out on my own and to start
Yeah,
everything from the ground up.
I can sympathize with your inability to convince people in the architecture business to try and assume more risk. And those conversations are very difficult from the architects that I know. And so, do you have any favorite architects? A quick top three.
Yes. Frank Gehry, Tom Bain. Tom Bain is won the Pritzker Prize, the highest award in architecture, about 10 years ago, I think. But
Uh-huh.
he worked under Obama as one of the heads for the educational design and stuff like that. So a lot of architects, you know, like I remember I studied under Tom Bain as well. And
Uh-huh.
and uh and one of his architects that worked under him, one of his partners, I had him for a class, and he would constantly say, I'm not rich, I can't do this, I can't do that. And like, so it's just, and then, and then I'm half Cuban. I'm really, I grew up in a Cuban community in Miami, very anti-communist. I just I don't like that stuff. But Tom Maine was really infatuated with Cuba and the whole communist thing and all that. So it's really hard in the architecture community, or architecture in general, architects, to talk about like trading and money. It just seems like gambling to them. They're
Mhm.
not, they're very closed-minded when it, it's crazy because architects are really open-minded with everything, and
But risk doesn't,
just
so we could
risk it.
almost, right, we could say that risk is something that people have to become used to or comfortable with. Like
Yeah,
architects don't seem to be comfortable, and their job is in fact to mitigate risk, right? The building has to stand. And
yes,
right. And so
yeah,
interesting concept of like the, so I guess we could ask ourselves
that's a great
how,
point.
right? How would we get somebody who's not comfortable with risk to be at least accept some risk in regards to their financial world? We could say one step at a time, right? Small risks first, obviously, things like that.
Yeah, it's crazy because it was very clear to me, the whole trading thing, as long as you study it, pursue it, for example, like architects got to do 10 years of school.
Right,
You got to travel the world. You got to
right.
see other buildings by other people. You got to
Yep,
know the latest technology.
yep.
You got to know a lot of these computer programs that I use. I'm familiar with them because architects in
You
architecture,
do you
I
use
use.
Revit?
Yeah, Revit, Maya,
Uh-huh.
all the Pixar animation from
Right.
the movies, we used it for building. So we were in touch with everything. It's a very cultured career, especially if you're doing it at a high level. Like I was always involved with like the Garys and Tom Maine and who else? Richard Meyer was one, I guess, but to explain risk and to approach risk with a responsible kind of like a way that you approach architecture, it just, I don't know, it turns a lot of people off in architecture. Like, 'cause you would think like everything I've just explained, that it would be kind of an easy transition from architecture to, it's not easy, but like
It's
it's
not.
a favorable. You have the odds a little bit better than other areas, other careers.
Yeah,
But yeah,
they
for
say,
me it was a no-brainer. Like everything came. I'm not going to say easy, but the amount of work I had to do, the clear mind I had to have, I approached it the same way I did architecture
do you
for
in
sure.
architecture they have deadlines, right? Do you give yourself these kind of deadlines or goals
Um,
or are you
Yeah, go architecture. The deadlines are insane, man. You're always on deadlines, and you're never completing everything. It's like a work of art. The architecture is always runs in parallel with art. So like a sculpture is like never finished. Even Michelangelo made the David sculpture. It's just at a certain point you just stop, or just like that's as close as you're gonna get to getting finished. So architecture, yeah, the deadlines. Um, Definitely, like I give myself deadlines for like when I was, especially on the learning curve, I would always have deadlines for books that I had to read, for courses I had to do, for videos I had to watch, for getting myself in a routine, because drawing's got to be done at a deadline. And then
yeah,
the drawing, so when you're doing a presentation with architecture, it's not just
yeah.
a drawing, it's a model, it's a drawing, it's an explanation, a written text. It's
And
many
it's
different things,
endless, right?
so
It's one deadline after another, after another, after another, all the time.
yeah, exactly. So you got to be really responsible, and you got to get things done, so yeah, it's just getting things done, I guess was a real was a good one, you know
So how
to
how did you learn to take a loss in trading?
take a loss. Okay, the deadline, the deadline for me was like, for example, now I have a taking a loss. I'll give myself to the end of the day to get out of a trade.
Uh-huh.
Um, I'll give myself a certain risk point on the daily chart. but I do have a wider risk than normal people in trading, let's say. I don't cut the risk just like that, like immediately. I let it play out.
Do you
And
slide? Do you slide your stops or your deadlines?
um if the thesis is intact.
Mhm.
If it's not intact, then if I don't know what's going on, I'll take
Like,
the loss.
right? Like if the client wants a change in the project, you'll do it somewhat,
Change
right?
order, stack it up.
Yeah. Yeah, if
Yeah,
the client wants to change, but at the same time, I would try to, you know, mention my point of view on the change and
right.
other things and see how the client, if that, so all the clients are all different, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, for real. And
the
so
page,
like it's the same with every trade, right? It's like, okay, right? Like all of a sudden there's a change. Here we
yeah,
are.
so it's very subjective and I
Yeah.
guess artistic in a sense, just
Hmm.
like, yeah, like with trading for me. Yeah.
Yeah, for real. Like there, you definitely have a perspective that I think you could communicate to people the the steps involved with accepting risk in regards to the knowledge required to become financially literate, right? Like we see the Florida governor signed a law this week saying that every high school kid has to pass a course on financial literacy to graduate from high school, the first in the nation. And so in a weird way, part of financial literacy is understanding the consequences of the risks and then the being able to think clearly while you adapt to that. You're probably very good at that, right? Like where people are not.
Yeah, and to mention the financial literacy thing, I wish I would have had lessons on this earlier because I was basically financially illiterate all until I finished my master's. You know, I
Yeah.
was so focused on architecture and mastering architecture, and which is the same thing for everybody in my position at that time. I was financially illiterate, so maybe
Right.
that has a big part to deal with of why architects are they're not good with understanding risk and understanding what it takes to trade, to be a financial trader at a high level.
Do
It's
you,
just all they understand is it's gambling and they write it off.
right? Do you think you could teach financial literacy now?
Um, as far as trading,
Or,
I think I could. I
mhm.
don't have much patience for it because like but but financial literacy as far as like uh
Like
getting your
what,
finances in order.
n-
I don't know
n-
about that, but
I
I mean
mean,
I
I'm
understand it for myself, but
right. Like, I mean, essentially it's a skill that they don't teach anywhere.
no, it's
And
not. And you know what's crazy is at the trade space office, I have a great trader sits next to me. Um and when I was talking about uh he's like, didn't you take an economics course in school? And I was like, no, I didn't need to. I didn't. I was so focused. And he's like this, like he's looking at me like I'm like so like he's so shocked. And I'm like, and I had to explain to him. I was like, in grad school, it's not that I didn't want to take economics, I wasn't open to it. It's just like I had design courses 3 days a week for 3 hours each. I had
right,
an architecture theory course. I had an architecture structures course. I have an architecture history course. I'm swamped, and like I gotta do 3D modeling. There's no time for economics course. There's just
right.
none. And I wish there was. There's got to be a way to figure it out. So like architects and you can like it makes no sense. Or even other professions. I'm assuming a lot of other professions are the same way. And it's like you just got to figure it out on your own. And I don't think that's right because yeah, it's
I,
it's just it's
right.
tough.
You got to think that there's a big job in here for all of us to teach financial literacy coming down the road, right? We're all self-taught, and it's I just think that that's going to be kind of like the Mother Teresa. I mean, not to be self-aggrandizing, but I mean, from a perspective of helping other people, probably the best thing we can do is start to teach that sort of stuff that we've learned ourselves. And anyway, um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, congrats on the road. They say Fibonacci numbers are pleasing to the eye in art and things like that. Like the the eye, the relationship of the iris to the pupil and things like that, or a fib
Hmm.
number. And you must be an artist. Do you, or at least have tendencies towards drawing art? So you must see some correlations between the math involved in art and the math involved in the markets.
I do, but at the same time, I was always I was not really a math guy, you know. I was always more of a drawing guy. Like I always got by with my skills in architecture more on the. I always would have a leg up on everybody else as far. I would try to go the art route, the math route. That was like secondary or tertiary for me all the time. But you speaking about Fibonacci, I don't even really use anything with Fibonacci, although I do know, you know, Fibonacci was like a Renaissance man, and like I did spend time in Italy and looking
Uh-huh.
at the Renaissance period of Palladio and the golden section and the golden, all this stuff. It's cool, and I'm in kind of in tune with it, and I'm aware of it, but like I don't really depend on the that stuff, you know. So
Do you play an instrument?
I do not, but I mean
Neither
now
do
I
I.
don't, but
Right.
I used to play piano as a kid, I guess. You know,
And is
I like the
there,
piano.
right there, I mean, there is, like you obviously understand structure from a perspective of an architect. And then the understanding is that tape, which is a lot of what Lucci's program is process, right? So we have both,
Hmm.
you have both the interesting concept of you understand structure from an architectural standpoint. And once you learn process, you've got the two pieces of the puzzle. So you've come from a non-traditional background of architecture, but you've managed to put together both process and structure into the way you view the markets. And so that's a huge advantage to people who just view it from one particular way, right? As a fib way or a so I would suggest that while you may not recognize it, your non-traditional background, which gives you killer transitional coping skills, has led you to this understanding that you have both process and structure, right? In other words, the structure of a trade, as well as the process of watching the tape unfold. And so I think you have a huge advantage that you may not recognize, just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I that's a great observation, you know, it's something to think about. But like yeah, I this
Like,
is just like
can you sense a bad structure in a stock?
yeah, I can. I could like especially with the technicals, the tape, um, you know, with stocks we have the level two when it's the rhythm is different and
Right,
like
that the so
the
the
so
tape is the process, right? But
mhm.
you can look at the, and you can kind of get a feel for the way it looks on the chart, like, ooh, this is not a solid looking house or foundation.
That's absolutely true. And you know, that's something that you get by screen time and then all those years of architecture training
Right,
and performance. Yeah, it
right,
all comes together. It's something that really can't be taught.
right. Is like a bottom look like a good foundation for a building?
Yeah, the majority of the times it does, depending on
Right,
the surface. And in Puerto
right.
Rico, actually, you got to be careful. A lot of potholes and it's very soft ground. It might, you know. So I don't know if you
Yeah,
guys been there.
yeah. I no, I've windsurfed at shacks and I've surfed at hobos on in Aguadilla. So
But
I
yeah,
know.
ground in Puerto Rico, very unstable. Ground in Miami is very, you know, you have the Everglades. You have like I remember as a kid in the backyard, you dig a couple feet, you start to get some water. You know, coming. But like in LA, the ground is very rocky, very stable. You can have skyscrapers. Like so in Miami, for example, the highest skyscraper for a long time was like 50 floors. That's as high as it can go because the ground was too soft. Because
How
it's
big
so.
was that condo that fell over in the middle of the night? Do
Oh,
you
that
remember
was
that?
in Miami Beach, right? Yeah,
Right, yeah.
that one was like that wasn't even that big. It was like 12, 13 stories, something like that.
Yeah. Can you imagine it
But
being
yeah,
in
that's
your
bad
bed?
foundation. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, exactly. So, but in LA, you have they really dig, and the ground is very solid, very rocky, because you know, and they're able to make a subway underground. They're able to like to do basements. The buildings can go as low as, you know, it goes a lot lower than somewhere in Miami, for example. So yeah, I'm always in tune with that. It's just, or like the sunlight, picturing where the sun angles are gonna have. These are things that, you know, just many years of training in artistic sense, and I guess like relating it to tape and screen time. I guess,
Right?
you know, that
It's
makes a lot of sense.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's like there's a, you know, like when you make a great trade, it's like a piece of art that no one sees, however, but it's like you were in step with the ocean or whatever you want to call it. You're in
yeah.
step with the cosmos when you make that trade. And not to get spiritual, but it's like
You, uh-huh.
you
And I've
foresaw.
known, I know I've listened to a podcast of like a surfer that's a really good trader. I don't even know his name, but he describes it like that. Or like I watched like a Kobe Bryant interview and he's describing basketball like that. Or
Yeah,
like,
you listen to Michaela talk, who's, you know, world's greatest skier woman, says the same sort of stuff. It's really cool to listen, you know, like, so I guess what we could say is that the markets then are an inanimate object. They don't care about us. And it's just like you're, whether you're on a mountain or whether you're on the ocean or whether you're trading, you're still dealing with that inanimate object and you have to be in step with it.
yeah, absolutely.
Right.
David, where did you learn how to read tape? Did Lucci teach you, or how did you pick
Uh,
that up?
no, Lucci, I came in contact with Lucci because of TradeSpace. Before TradeSpace, I knew Lucci from like Traders for a Cause or stuff like that, and I was, you know, it was cool, so I decided to join TradeSpace. But I learned tape mostly, you know, I started with the Tim Sykes courses. He has a whole library there, and you can fend for yourself in the library and then dig into the rabbit hole. And you know, I just, everybody that was mentioned along the way, I would look into them and ask them questions. And there's a couple of small books like I think this little book called Rolo Tape, Studies in
Yeah.
Tape Reading.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
You read that? You read that? I
a
read that
while
too.
ago.
You know how old that book is?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's insane. I think I was like 1920s.
Yeah, it's from the 20s. Like nobody knows
Wow.
that book.
Yeah,
I was
and
going to say,
I
because it's not normal that for somebody to go learn tape on their own is not a normal pursuit. There are
no,
very few
it's
people that
not.
are self-taught with tape.
I
There's
think
this
it's
book.
so important. Oh, there's
This
one course on Udemy. I don't know if you guys heard of it. It's I think some former prop trader made it, but it's outdated. I mean, but tape is really never outdated anyway. So it was like a 10-hour course on tape, and it at the time it barely made any sense to me, but like in hindsight, it would make sense here and there. So like little tidbits helped. You know, with trading, little nuggets of information are so important,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's like a red flag on a date, right? Like you see all these little things that happen over the years and then you're like, "Oh, I get it now," right? That's important where had you not experienced it a million times prior, you would have just let it go by. And then,
Exactly.
yeah, it's really hard to like, how do you teach that, right? That's really tough. Like when this happens, right? And you know, we only have like a fraction of a second to execute when you see that on tape. And
Yeah.
you're just like, oh, the phone's ringing. Oh, someone texts me. Oh, there's an email. And there goes, you know, you're like, your opportunity for the day is gone. So it's
Yeah.
really, it's like, wow, it's such a,
But one more thing about tape, I did learn there was Tim Grittani had some videos on tape, quite a few videos, and that one it made a lot of sense to me when he described it. And yeah, I did look at Lucci's tape reading stuff early on, and it you know, so I was able to make sense of multiple things. But and then once you kind of understand the basics or the gist of it, just screen time over, you know, over time,
you know,
yeah,
what do
Chris
it's
you,
talk
great.
you know, what do you tell people who don't have all day to watch tape, right? Like not everybody's like, if you're an architect and you want to get involved in the
Hmm.
game, you want to learn, but you can't watch tape, right? It's just like, no, right?
good luck.
You're on a deadline, you know that you're working from 7 in the morning till 8 at night drawing. And then how are these people going to become financially literate? Right. So
I uh-huh.
it's like, do we tell them to zoom out? Would you tell somebody to zoom out and just take a
I
like a
yeah, I guess a swing trade. It's got to be a swing trade. It's got to be something that makes a lot of sense.
Or something that you know about, right? Some companies say you love Nike shoes, right? And just watch Nike stock like whenever you get a chance, and then you just, you know, it's like you're dating Nike stock, and you watch how it acts.
Yeah, and then but the thing is, and an architect is not making that much money, so
But
even a
they,
good
you know,
architect, like the ceiling is like 120 grand a year or something like that. So like they can't take the drawdown too well,
mhm.
and then it's gonna be like, oh, I should have never done this in the first place.
But you know that
So
they have to start, right? They have to. I mean, everybody has to. I mean, if you, as you said, right, everybody has to become financially literate. And so first,
yes,
right, if so, if we at least start from the place of do no harm and then go forward from there.
absolutely. So yeah, the first step is the literacy and the understanding of what you're getting into, and then yeah, you know,
Well put, well put, right? What you're getting into. And
yeah.
so, and then so that I guess the next question would be, you know, where to for you, or for, you know, and for Ranch and myself, is like where to from here? Like the game is evolving, certainly, right? And so, you know,
Where to?
yeah, what, I mean, what's our strategic advantage in the future? You know,
Well,
where's the
uh,
high ground for us? You know,
well, me as a primarily short, I gotta learn how to do some longs too, so I use the long. My plan is to use the longs as a way to prevent myself from getting squeezed as much,
fuck.
How did you
and
wind up looking at shorts? Because you talk about risk aversion in architecture, and your need for more safety, and here you are shorting small caps. Like that's a paradigm shift.
yeah,
Like
okay,
David, time out. I'm
yeah,
gonna, let me take this first. Ranch, I grew up in the ring, and every order that came in for 30 years was a buyer. So your natural edge was on the short side. So just because you have a bias to a particular direction doesn't necessarily mean that there's more risk or less risk associated with it. And for example, say you're a skier, and I think Branch is a skier, right? You understand the rhythm of going down a hill. You can actually feel the way the mountain's unfolding as you're skiing it, and you know what's over the, or more likely than not, you know the extent of the drop and over a roll given the prior rolls. So there is essentially a rhythm to the downside when you're skiing. And so from a short side, there are people who understand that there is that sort of gravity functions. And because gravity functions and you are measuring gravity through speed and time, you can get a rhythm on the short side. Sorry, David, go ahead.
that yes, well put. And so a few things. So I understood early on. Okay, so it's like whatever goes up must come down, and it's easier for things to collapse than to go up. Like you can build something and it takes forever. Like you got the cathedral in Barcelona right now. Still getting built over 250 years. It
Right,
just takes
right,
one thing to just knock it down.
right.
So
Is that the Gaudi one, right?
yes, yes, the
Yeah,
Gaudi,
Sagrada
the Barcelona
Familia.
Cathedral
yeah,
is
it's
still
cool.
under.
There's
Yeah,
still
it's still
scaffolding inside.
yeah, it's
The place is
crazy.
amazing.
Um, yeah, I was there in 2009, and yeah, hopefully I can go visit it soon. It's crazy what trading allows. I never thought I'd be visiting anytime soon with trading. It's schedules free and you can trade, so why not?
Hey,
But
hey, David,
I yeah,
how did, not to interrupt, how would you explain to somebody at a party what going short is?
what going short is, okay, so you borrow shares from your broker. You have to have a
Yeah,
good
no,
broker
but
that
I don't know anything about trading. I know nothing. I'm an
okay,
architect, and you're like,
yeah,
I go short. You must have
okay,
had
so
this conversation like 100
I
times.
I've had it and I've always been terrible at explaining it. I just like kind of give up on explaining. But like okay, so someone actually told me, oh, so wait a second. So it's like there's someone I was explaining it to. They actually picked it up this way, and I was like, okay, I guess that kind of makes sense. So you borrow someone's car, and then you sell the car with their permission, and then you at a profit, and then you give a tiny bit of the profit and the cash for the car to the original owner.
I have explained
You
it
know what I'm
this
saying?
way. Yeah, I've explained it this way. I'm at a party and someone says, "Do you know where I can get a joint?" And I'm like, no, but if you give me $5, uh, I can get you one in a half an hour, because in the back of my mind, I know my friend Mikey is coming to the party. He'll sell me a joint for $3. So I've sold something I don't own for $5. In a half an hour, Mikey shows up at the party. I buy the joint for $3. I deliver the joint to the guy and I pocket the $2.
That's the perfect. I gotta steal that one from
Yeah,
now
use
on.
that.
Because I always get like caught in a pickle and people don't really understand what I'm trying to say. I'm like,
Right.
I don't know, man. But because people are, the first thing is like, oh, shorting is unlimited risk. Oh my God, the stock is gonna go to $1 billion. You're gonna lose everything. You're gonna lose your shirt. You're gonna
Yeah,
be trading
yeah,
bare
and
chested.
then right, trees don't grow to the sky. Not every story has a happy ending, and on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah, but you know it's interesting. So I want to last year on my podcast, I had the crazy experience of interviewing Jack Schwager, Market Wizards,
No
Oh, that's
and
cool.
kidding.
yeah, man, that was awesome. It was one of my year highlights. And
Yeah.
I told him what I was my intro. I'm short selling small caps. He was like, he almost had a heart attack. He's like, what? How? What? But you know, it's these days things are a lot different. You know, so like I was having a conversation with a trader in TradeSpace about this. You know, you can recycle shares, you can be in and out of trades. There's technology. Like sometimes one of my setups, like on a spike of crazy above VWAP, I'll hit it short after a certain percentage, and that is high on the day, depending on the catalyst and blah blah blah. And like I'll recycle on the way down, you know, and then be flat before the stock even is close to getting red. So like I'll take a piece of the green of the stock being overextended, and
Mhm.
I'll be in and out of it. And
You know
one of
what?
my
Hey, time out,
friends,
time out. Paul
yeah,
Hornblower would actually take you to task here, and he would say that you need to reinitiate after you obviously execute well, you take your profits, but if the trade's still valid on that next bounce, we're supposed to reinitiate.
that is true. And
Because
you know,
that's hard.
it's hard, and especially now I'm still just a couple of years in the game, you know, and I'm still improving my game every day. So
Yeah.
I do got to get better with that. I got to get better at not covering, so you know, leaving a position there to get the extra percentage, let it play out like completely, you know. So I'm still getting adjusted to everything every day. Like I'm improving. I'm getting better. I'm studying. It is I'm nowhere near as successful as I wanna and I'm trying to be. So
You know what?
yeah, I
You're
definitely got
gonna.
to get better at reshorting the balances, getting more
Yep.
aggressive, sizing up in certain
Yep.
plays, and
Yep.
yeah,
You know,
everything.
we have to stop having a party after we cover.
You definitely, definitely, you know, it's
Parties are
like
fun.
sometimes, yeah, sometimes I'm like, okay, like I cover and I move on too fast, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
there's more to be, we
Right.
got
Yeah.
more,
I cover too early. I have a party, and then I'm just like, oh fuck.
yeah,
You
but,
know.
but for sure, but, and, yeah, yeah, so,
So what would you, if someone's a passive long side player, would you encourage them to start to learn about trying to pick tops? Like, we know bottoms are phoenixes, or they have been, right? A quick stab to like a catching falling knife, right? And the tops seem to be long and drawn out, right? As they just run into supply. How would
so,
you,
uh,
the question is how would you tell somebody who's just a passive long side player to hone or to start to learn learn the ability of what a top looks like?
okay, well, I like to look at, a lot of dilution lately,
Uh-huh.
this year. So I would first look at where dilution is, where warrants are, where does the company have an S3, where the resistance levels are on the year chart, on the daily chart, the 90 days, the minute candles, the 5-minute candles, and see where that resistance is, where the previous volume was at. and where the bag holders are. Just the concept of just trying to
Yep.
find where those bag holders are
Hmm.
from the past and where the dilution is. And
Hawkins used to say he wanted to, or still says he wants to find people who are caught off sides. In other words, like you're
that's,
saying, where the
yeah,
bag holders are. And then another interesting concept is that the most recent thinking on volume at the highs is that it's on no volume. In other words, the buyers just run out of gas rather than some sort of cataclysmic, two battering rams meeting each other, as though the tops are just like a lack of interest. I haven't,
it's a very good observation.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the latest thinking, but you know, your guess is as good as mine. And don't they seem to be like long drawn out affairs lately, right? Even on the 1 minute chart, they're like 10 minutes of like 1 minute bars, just like banging up against a roof. And then they just roll over. And, but yeah, anything you have noticed in regards to the tops would be helpful for our listeners.
Well, on the small caps, um, the thing is that the market environment this year is a lot different than last year. The long, at least in small caps, the longs and the meme players and the stimulus check guys, like they're uh they're already, it seems like it's ran its course for the most part. So
Mhm.
like for example, there was a stock last week, Redbox, that was going crazy on Friday, and it was just hitting the resistance levels and so over. Oh, that's one thing. So when it's so overextended, I like to use VWAP. So when it's completely overextended on VWAP and hitting a resistance level from the previous 90 days, 180 days, year, um, yeah, that could, it's very close to coming to the top, especially when the company, I like to pick on the companies that I have a bias against. And Redbox, for example, it's like, who's using Redbox? Like I was walking in Puerto Rico by this Walgreens every day, and I would always go to Walgreens, and it's open 24 hours, and they have a Redbox in front. It's like rusting away, you know. So like I already have this bias against this thing, and I know. So like those resistance levels, they come in real handy in a company like that that has no like story that's gonna take it away, And so when Redbox is up 80%, it's telling me some short seller, someone's targeting the short sellers, blow them out on a Friday to squeeze the stock. And it's when the resistance is overwhelming, that overextension is likely to reverse. And the same thing goes. There's another company I was doing the same thing with. It's called Nightscope, and they do these R2D2 kind of robots for security. And I like the same thing. I have a strong bias against this. I've seen this in person. It's like when my architecture thing comes, like my creativity, my imagination, and my whole story narrative comes to play, as along with technicals, along with fundamentals, along with reading what the crowd is up to. I'll check Twitter for sentiment. But yeah, Nightscope was a R2D2 robots. It's come in play a lot recently, probably 5 or 6 times the past month. Yeah, so all through March, even February. They IPO'd in January, and it was just robots, and like it would squeeze above VWAP, and like short sellers were getting burned. And then like once the short sellers get burned, that's usually the top when the last short sellers are covering or forced to cover. So I'll be looking for that as a signal as well. It's like, okay, when is the short squeeze uh dying off over here? Because that's forced buying. It's violent buy. Like when you see those candles in the small caps go straight up, that's violent price action, which indicates it's probably a short squeeze. And when the short squeeze ends, it's like an airplane that runs out of gas. It's gonna
Mhm.
come back to earth.
Isn't it
And so I
interesting?
look for that.
But isn't it interesting when they run out of gas, the plane still has a slope that's very much like flying, and then it's as though as the buying dries up, then the momentum increases as the plane picks up speed as it drops. So at the very top, when you're fading something, it doesn't always immediately reverse and go straight down. it can sort of drift down and then pick up speed as it goes down,
That is
which is
true.
right.
Yeah.
Everybody's so about immediate gratification these days, right? Did I get likes on
Mhm.
social media and things like that? And sometimes to be really right on these trades, both for you and I, right, we cover too quickly. It's like we need to get beyond our need for immediate gratification on our shorts and hold them sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so recently too, just holding overnight I tried to avoid holding overnight, but letting it play out completely for the is something, yeah, I need to get better at
Yeah, me
for
too.
sure.
Me too. I'm
Oh,
with you, after all these years. Oh, and by the way, that thing about how you hate a company, that's worked for 40 years. Like all the time I've been in this business, I've seen people do that. They walk in somewhere and
Yeah.
they hate a company and they short the stock and it works.
That's good to hear, So just the other day here in LA, the Nightscope, the security robots. I used
yep.
to see this robot in this mall over here in downtown LA. And before I was even into trading, and it would get spray painted on the homeless. 'Cause LA has a lot of homeless. They would come and kick this thing over, and like it would run out of battery and be stranded in the middle of the mall. So I'm just a guy that I pay attention to like a lot of different things all the time. Architects are also very detail oriented, which comes in handy with trading. It's architects should. It's a shame that there's not really. I can't picture any. I mean, I don't know any architects that are traders, but
No, and I can tell you, you have great pride in your work because it's there, right? You've built a building and it's there. And every time you look around, you can say, look, I did that
yeah,
as an
it's like a kid. I don't have kids, but it's like you created this thing, and it's on the earth. It's your legacy, you
right.
know.
And the buildings last longer than children.
A lot of times, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
If either of you guys would like to borrow one at any point in time, just let me know and you can get a good idea of what it's like.
Okay, um, yeah.
So, David, we're gonna wrap here in a few minutes. There's so many people who are probably curious on how to make the transition from something that's not risk savvy. You know, do you
Mhm.
take physical risks, David?
Physical risk, like you mean like MMA fighting or something?
Well, just yeah. I mean, do you
I
do you
no
ride your
no
bike
I
through traffic? Do you rock
Yeah, so
climb?
that's a crazy. So I think about this all the time. People talk of People are risk averse. Everything we do is risk. When I was on the airplane from Puerto Rico to here, I actually, I'm thinking, man, they've managed to get this airplane and throw it in the air and then just like shoot me across and like it's shaking everywhere. There's creaks. It's not a perfect airplane. This airplane is probably 20 years old or something like that, and we've managed to accept the risk of, and actually there's hardly any risk. We've managed to make the airplane like I don't know what the
An
how
acceptable
many
risk,
plane yeah even a car, like no, actually the plane's a bad example, but it's crazy. It's in the sky so many feet in the air,
right?
and and hardly anything happens to it ever. But the car, we've accepted the risk of going in a car or riding a bike. People ride bikes without helmets here, you
Mhm.
know um it's just crossing the street. Everything is a risk. People, I know women are risk averse, uh,
The
very
proper
by nature.
political correct way to say is that they're networkers. They're they build consortiums. We would say they are excellent hedgers.
Yes, and I think women can be women have better potential to be a trader, in general. Um, However, the reason why I mention that is because like you still gotta like if you get married, that's a risk, so
Right?
so like you can be as risk averse as you want in life, but if you marry wrong, that one thing can ruin everything.
Well, there
Or
is we can spin it to the positive too, right? The understanding is that you have X number of minutes alive in this body. And so to get your money's worth per se, you should assume a reasonable degree of risk for the human body that you got.
Yeah, you know, it's just like there's a risk with everything, and there's a risk without taking risk. So if you don't take the risk, it's a risk. And
It's
like, so, you know, it's like
genius.
when there's
Fucking
always risk.
genius.
So you just gotta accept it, you know? And it's like, what kind of life do you want to live? For me, it was just I don't want to have the regret. I kind of knew, I was aware of the trading thing, and I was like, you know, I got to give it a shot, because if not, I'm going to regret it. And if regret is also a risk. So,
Yeah.
you know, I don't
Yeah.
want to. So how to
Regret
come
doesn't
in
taste
terms with
good
that?
either.
Yeah.
Yes, it's terrible. I don't want to be like um 90 years old or whatever and regretting what if I would have done that, you know? So my life could have changed. So
Congratulations, right? There's no one to pat you on the back, but we will all the time, for real. And
thanks, man.
yeah, you deserve it. And it's a lonely journey. And to everybody else who's watching, we understand too, it's a lonely journey. And please join us again here on Misfits, hopefully with David again. So,
Absolutely.
right? Thank you for
Well, thanks
coming.
guys for having me.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thanks
really
for coming on, David.
fun.
Appreciate it.
All right, bye
Absolutely.
now.
All right, you
Take
guys
care.
have a good one.
Bye.
So long.
Bye.